Mostly we want clarification, we want demystification of the numbers, and of course we're going to be indulging with two experts. They could just start by introducing themselves, but first, maybe you start by introducing yourselves and also tell us the stock markets. What is it? I'll start with you.
My name is Macharia. I'm the founder and CEO of Abacus Wealth Management. And to answer you, what's the stock market? It's effectively a place for businesses to try and raise capital by selling portions of themselves in the name of shares. But it's also an opportunity for investors to actually make money by buying these shares and getting dividends or seeing their prices increase.
Right.
Yeah. My name is Eric Musau, and I run the Research and Sustainable Finance Division of SIB, which is an investment bank licensed by the Capital Markets Authority.
Right.
Yeah.
Eric, as a researcher, one must wonder when it comes to the Kenyan stock markets. Of course, there are naysayers, there are supporters. What is your view on our performance in comparison to maybe even other African countries?
Well, obviously, if you look at 2023, it was certainly a dismal performance. When you look at, in dollar terms, how we performed, we were certainly one of the worst performing in the year.
Right.
But overall, if you look at the mix of products and the type of companies that have listed, over the years, we're actually quite well positioned as a market. I think there's still room, and one can look forward and say that we still have a platform that can actually grow.
Right.
So I am still optimistic about the prospects of the market.
All right, Eric. Mostly people usually say when you're at the bottom, the only way is up.
Yes.
Nganga, what do you think of that?
It's true. When you're at the bottom, the only way is up. But there are certain challenges, of course, that have to be overcome in the initial stages. We expect to see an increase in the course of this year, possibly driven by the expected rate cuts in the US, and so see a lot more of foreign inflow coming in. There's still some work I think the exchange itself needs to do in increasing liquidity. I mean, you had from the news 40%, 48%, half of the market is Safaricom.
Right.
So there needs to be an increase in how much liquidity is available. But I think there's still fantastic opportunities in the market, like he's mentioned. And this is usually an investment that you take a very long-term view on. And there are still some very nice companies that we can invest in the market. Yeah.
Right. Nganga, when you usually think of Safaricom, you think of the last significant listing in the Nairobi Securities Exchange. That was 12 years ago. I love that we have so much hope. Do you believe that we have a chance, given that, with the Privatization Bill/Act that came into place, do you believe that we're going to have another significant listing anytime soon?
There are a lot of factors that played into Safaricom's success.
Right.
Safaricom itself being number one, and this was, I think, almost 15 years ago, 2008. And so the factors around that time were actually slightly different. Access to credit was one of the things that, money was available, the economy was growing, there was a lot of growth and disposable income available. And so whenever there were listings, people had money to actually buy into them. With these new listings, unless we see an increase in the amount of money that people have available to save and to invest, we are likely to see dismal performance, particularly in the retail sector. And depending on the companies themselves, there might be uptake by foreign investors and institutional investors. But up until we start to see money flowing, people actually having disposable income, having savings, it's going to be difficult to drive investment without driving income in the initial stages first. Yeah.
Right. Right. And, the stock markets are a way for companies to usually get, capital. But we find that a lot of Kenyan businesses usually opt for loans. Maybe gathering or selling shares on the capital markets could be an easier way. However, a lot of businesses usually shun from it. Eric, why do you think this is?
Well, obviously, it's a much longer process. When you think about just that process that goes. But it's really a critical ingredient in the life of a company, to be able to list its shares, diversify its shareholders, and improve its corporate governance. Some of the best brands, even if the stock prices have been hurt, generally tend to be in the stock market. And we know in markets such as the US, they have 10 to 30 IPOs every month.
Right.
Of course, coming in and going out. And that's really what the role of the stock market should be.
Right.
The stock exchange itself, together with market players, as well as government. Government does provide the incentives We know if you're buying or selling shares on the stock exchange, there's no capital gains tax. That's at 15% if you're a private company. And our sense is that with the privatization in the horizon, and hopefully that the regulations, generally government things take time.
Right.
There's always a lot of controversies. But it makes a lot of sense, even not just with the amount of money which is raised, because government can opt to just list a small proportion of these companies.
Right.
The improvement in corporate governance is also very critical, because we know when these companies are out there in the dark, lots of things happen. When they are out in the market and they have to report every 6 months to the public, generally they tend to be a lot more disciplined.
Right.
And we've seen the story of Safaricom. We know what happened to Telecom Kenya. And there are many stories. KenGen, Kenya Power,
right.
The good thing is that they are in the market and we're able to see what they are doing. And we're able to put pressure to ensure that they do well. And our sense is that it should be good. I think it's just to manage the scenario and also be able to attract foreign capital.
Right.
I think Safaricom, when it listed during those days,
right.
it also attracted foreign capital.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I just have to ask, because we need to get